Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you today. First, it was overwhelming DNA evidence in the Kohberger case, contrary to some people's claims. There was a random stabbing death of a Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte train. Well, that guy is now being held without bond. We'll give you all the details. Barry Morphew remains in custody down there in Alamosa. I guess that bond modification didn't work out so well. Then we had a little more courtroom drama with Alan Jackson. He's got some bail blues as well. A Fort Worth man has been charged with murder after admitting to strangling his roommate. A matrimonial mishap 3 times at once. It happens. We have this day in legal history and our quote of the day and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment down below. Hit that bell for notifications. And yes, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps as well. So before we get to the docket, let me remind you to go to CrimeTalkSearch.com and sign up for a background subscription service today. When you do, you'll be able to do a background search on anyone here in the United States that you desire. And guess what? You're going to have a report emailed to you literally while you wait, and it's going to have all kinds of information that you may want to know about somebody. For example, cell phone numbers, email addresses, social media presence. You may say, Scott, what do I need to know about this person? Well, why do they have 6 different phone numbers, burner phones perhaps? Why do they have all those email addresses? Is that because they're signing up for dating websites that they're not telling you about? You're also going to find out if they're married. Are they divorced? Do they have a criminal record? Do they have to put themselves on one of those registries? Yes, go to CrimeTalkSearch.com and find out today. So whether somebody's coming into your life and you want to check them out, or maybe you're not certain if they should remain in your life, go to CrimeTalkSearch.com. Sign up today. You're going to be happy that you did. Now, before we get to the docket, I want to mention that we went to CrimeCon here in Denver, and we didn't speak, but we put up a little booth, and we did this several years ago. It was during kind of the end of COVID. It was in Las Vegas. Frankly, we didn't really know what we were doing. Probably still don't. But, we gave it a good shot. But it was amazing. And to be honest with you, I didn't even have time to go to the people speaking, the events, because we literally had a steady flow of people coming by our booth constantly. Now, we posted it up on Facebook. I think we got everybody up. I'm not sure. There's so many photographs. I mean, literally, there are hundreds of photographs of people that we took photos with. And these are true Crime Talk aficionados who have been with us literally since day one, and they told us as such, as well as new people who are becoming Crime Talk aficionados. It was an amazing event. Got to hang out with and meet the aficionados, and it was amazing. And we can put up a couple of those photos as well, just to show you. And then, I mean, we got some books. Mike King came by. He's been on the show. He's in the Cool Kid Club. He gets to speak at all those things. Anyway, he gave me his book. We got another one, The Long Road to Justice, The Unraveling of Alec Murdaugh. Wrong Ride Home. People said, hey, take a look at this book. But let me tell you the one. And it was, like I said, it was so nice to meet everybody. But look at this. Okay, this is a mug thing for your snacks and your coffee. And a lady brought it up to us on Sunday. Just nice young lady. She maybe had a little walker type of thing to help her about, but she was very spry and very sharp. And she said, I think I had actually run to the restroom, and I got a text and said, there is a woman here that wants to meet you, and she has a gift for you. And I said, okay, I'm on my way. It was just couple feet away. And this woman, and she gave me this, and she wrote a nice, very, very nice note. It says, thank you for sharing on YouTube. I like no nonsense reporting. I'm interested in DNA, true crime, and ancestry research, and I'm 89. I'm glad to be here. And that was from Marilyn Sherman, a lovely, lovely lady from Washington State, came all that way to give me this. And I don't know if it was she'd given them to other people. I'm sure she did. She was just a very kind lady. I love the fact, 89, keeping up with technology, watching YouTube, following her passion, and then took the time. And that was the thing that was the most amazing part, was these people that came up and said, I know you. I'm like, well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate you watching. She goes, no, I know you because, I tell you about my life. She goes, but we've never met. A lot of people said, but we've never met. But they said, we cook dinner every night. You're in my living room every night. I fold laundry together with you every night. And that's my time. So very humbling experience for people to come and talk with us and literally say, how important it is for me in their life. Very, very humbling. Want to make sure we obviously keep up the game. Don't want to let anybody down. That's for sure. But, there's people are so busy and there's so many options out there. So the fact that they take the time to listen to Crime Talk, like I said, it was amazing, kind of charged up the batteries, but humbling because, well, now we don't want to let anybody down either. All right, let's go ahead and get to the docket. Monday, September 8th, 2025. First on the docket, guess what? It wasn't just a little DNA in the Bryan Kohberger case. It was overwhelming DNA. Now, you may recall I hinted to this because remember, the defense had to make all the DNA go away, and they came up with the best they could, but they didn't really have any way to challenge it and say, well, it wasn't Bryan Kohberger's DNA. Not a single one. Why? Because it was overwhelming, and even the defense's own experts told them that. So the DNA evidence in the University of Idaho murder cases was, well, apparently quite decisive. So in the investigation of the University of Idaho student murders, genetic genealogists identified an extraordinarily large quantity of DNA, hundreds of times more than is needed in even a typical case, enabling obviously a swift resolution to the quadruple stabbing that profoundly impacted the community there in Idaho as well as the nation. So David Middleman, founder and CEO of Courtroom, who I might just note was literally right across from where we were, like the next aisle over. They had a big thing right in the middle and we were right there. They had a big setup about their DNA. Well, he described the DNA sample as catastrophic in its implications, generating leads that directed the police directly to Bryan Kohberger based on material left on the K-bar sheath at the crime scene. Now, this abundance of evidence rendered it untenable for the defense to challenge its validity effectively. The DNA not only provided ample material for analysis, but also allowed Courtroom's team to pinpoint Kohberger's family tree with remarkable speed. Now, during an interview at CrimeCon, at the conference, obviously in Denver, we just talked about, Mr. Middleton clarified that initial leads, while not naming Kohberger directly, indicated a multi-generational American family with Italian ancestry. The genealogy traced this to Pennsylvania lineage, interacting with Italian heritage in only 2 instances. Critically, this was far from mere trace or touch DNA, as some reports had suggested. It was an abundant sample of exceptional quality, Middleton emphasized. Now, the DNA evidence was amazing, he said. There was tons of DNA. It was not trace DNA. This volume and caliber silenced critics who attempted to dismiss it as incidental touch DNA, underscoring a fundamental truth. DNA is DNA, irrespective of origin, and its evidentiary weight in this case was irrefutable, he said. The certainty of the DNA quality, the analytical process, and the familial tree details ensured identification of a specific individual, in this case, obviously, Bryan Kohberger. Complementing the DNA, police identified a white Hyundai Elantra matching Kohberger's vehicle. Kohberger obviously was the Pennsylvania resident attending Washington State University, a mere 10 miles from the scene. He emerges as a suspect. And although no murder weapon was ever recovered, the sheath was found beside the victim, Madison Mogen. Subsequent warrants revealed that Kohberger had purchased the K-bar through Amazon, as well as the sheath, and don't forget the sharpening tool. And let's not forget the victims, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and Kaylee Gonzalez, and Madison Mogen were all killed back there on November 13th of 2023. Now, Courtroom received the samples on Thanksgiving, producing a profile within a mere 48 hours. By December 19th, the FBI provided Kohberger's name to the police, culminating in his arrest on December 30th, following a raid at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, there in the Pocono Mountains. Investigators also noted that without the DNA, resolution might have required reviewing thousands of Hyundai Elantra leads with an uncertain timeline. Now, Kohberger's DNA was absent from the CODIS system due to no prior criminal record, but investigative genetic genealogy bridged that gap, becoming pivotal to the prosecution. So Jeff Nye, the chief of the criminal division of the Idaho Attorney General's office, affirmed that the case's outcome depended on retaining this evidence against the defense motion to have it suppressed. But following the court's denial of those motions, Kohberger entered a guilty plea back in early July to evade the death penalty. Now, as I had previously stated in previous videos, motions hearings can be a watershed event. And I noted that when the defense lost literally every motion that they had, but in particular the DNA evidence, I said, things are not looking good for the defense. My guess is now the defense is probably trying to work out a plea bargain. And sure enough, yes, they did. So another woman, Christine Middleman, she's Ortham's chief development officer, advocates for broader applications of these genealogy techniques, collaborating with families to ensure timely access. She stated that such methods could prevent future crimes, noting that Kohberger's prompt apprehension likely saved lives. Now, if you watch regularly, you know Kohberger is now serving 4 consecutive life sentences, plus that extra 10 years for the burglary. He's waived his appellate rights and any future attempts to have a sentence reduction under a motion to reconsider. So, ladies and gentlemen, I got so much flack. I don't know how, when we did our Tuesday night live call-in shows, I would get people that were so upset. Scott, it's just trace evidence. It's just trace evidence. It doesn't matter. It's not like, and I said, DNA evidence is DNA evidence. I have done these trials, ladies and gentlemen. Try to argue that, oh, guess what? The sample was so small, but you still were able to identify my client. That dog don't hunt when it comes to selling it to a jury, ladies and gentlemen. And DNA is DNA. The fact that they were able to get a large enough sample in which to come up with the breakdown of the DNA and then match it with a known sample, i.e. Kohberger once they arrest him or at the crime scene, right? That is enough for a jury to say that's close enough. And if they didn't have enough of a sample to generate the DNA sequencing, they would have to say it's insufficient sample to create a DNA sampling. And I've been saying this all along, but everybody kept telling me, oh, Scott, it's all the pro-burgers kept telling me it's just sample DNA. Listen, I've made that argument in court. I've explained if they took a swab of my desk and, they'd probably have my DNA on it, Frank's DNA on it, probably the cleaning lady's DNA on it. But the fact is, it's still there. And what you had to remember in the Bryan Kohberger case was his DNA was there. What are the odds? Your DNA wasn't there. My DNA wasn't there. It just happened to be Bryan Kohberger's DNA, who just happened to have a K-bar knife. Well, I guess I have one, but my DNA wasn't there, and I still have my knife. Just remember, DNA. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, DNA evidence is powerful evidence. It's going to be detrimental, obviously, like was to Bryan Kohberger, just like in the Rex Heuermann case. Obviously, he's entitled to the presumption of innocence, but the reality of it is his DNA or his wife's DNA through hair, maybe even a child, happened to be there. What are the odds that their DNA happened to be there? Think about it. And that's the biggest argument that the prosecutors make. And it works every time. The jury's like, you're right, because my DNA wasn't there. Think about it. Next on the docket, I'm not sure why this story is not getting more traction everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, but this young Ukrainian refugee was killed on a train. And when you see the video, it's appalling. Let's take a look at this case. It highlights the perils of unprovoked violence. Please meet our villain, DeCarlos Brown Jr. This guy's 34, and he now stands accused of murder of a 23 Ukrainian refugee by the name of Irina Zarkuska on a Charlotte light rail train. Now, of course, if you're on public transportation, there's going to be video, right? So this case was captured on surveillance video, and it underscores the randomness of the crime with no prior connection between the suspect and the victim, suggesting it was obviously a killing without motive or provocation. Now, Zarkuska, who had fled war-torn Ukraine seeking safety here in the United States, was seated on the Lynx Blue Line train about 10 p.m. on August 22nd when Brown, who was seating behind her, gets up. You can see him actually remove a knife, gets up, and then stabs Zarkuska in the neck multiple times. Police have described the incident as entirely random, with no evidence of any relationship, dispute, or targeted intent. Brown, a homeless individual with a documented history of mental health issues, including schizophrenia, fled the scene but was obviously apprehended shortly thereafter. Now, the video, released publicly on September 6th, depicts the abrupt and senseless nature of the assault, prompting some widespread outrage over public safety on not only the transit system, but there in Charlotte. Then we got Brown's extensive criminal record spanning over a decade and including multiple arrests for assault, armed robbery, and other offenses. And it's drawn some scrutiny as to judicial decisions preceding the murder here in this case. So earlier in 2025, he was released by a magistrate judge on a written promise to appear, affectionately known as a personal recognizance bond, despite pending charges. Anyway, this history kind of amplifies concerns that the attack might have been preventable, though investigators maintain it was an impulse act devoid of personal animus. But then let's bring in the mayor there of Charlotte, V. Lyles. And she has addressed the tragedy in a statement that sparked a little bit of debate. Now, initially on August 26th, she emphasized the suspect's mental health struggles, stating that Brown had long struggled with mental health issues and looked to have suffered a crisis and advocated for treating such conditions with the same compassion, diligence, and commitment as cancer or heart disease. Well, needless to say, this focus on the perpetrator well-being drew a little bit of criticism from community members as well as, the internet, who accused her of prioritizing Brown's circumstances over the victim's plight and downplaying his criminal accountability. In a subsequent statement on September 6th, following the video's release, the mayor shifted emphasis to the innocent victim, describing the attack as a senseless and tragic loss and expressing heartbreak for Zartuska's family. She committed to enhancing city safety measures, stating, "I remain committed to doing all we can do to protect our residents and ensure Charlotte is a place where everyone feels safe." The mayor's evolving statement obviously reflects a little bit of tension between addressing the mental health crisis and ensuring justice for victims of random violence. Now, legally, Brown was indicted on first-degree murder charges and made his initial appearance back on August 29th when a judge ordered him to be held without bond due to his mental health history. Guess what? He's going under a court-ordered competency evaluation to determine if he is even fit to stand trial. Now, there's no specific date for the next hearing. Obviously, we're waiting on the mental health evaluation to see if he is in fact competent. If he is deemed competent, the case will obviously advance to an arraignment, and then we'll have the pretrial phase, which will include motions and things of that nature. But needless to say, as of right now, Mr. Brown remains in custody in the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. You watch that video, and I've watched it, half a dozen times. Mr. Brown is sitting in the chair. The young woman gets on the train, sits in front of it, minding her own business, looking at her phone. You can see the guy take his knife out of his pocket and comes up and just stabs her. We're not going to show the unedited version, obviously, but you get the idea. Complete senseless violence. And I am compassionate to people with mental health issues. But at a certain point, if people are not going to comply with taking their drugs, for example, if they're schizophrenic, they obviously, need to be able to do something with them, whether through some sort of civil commitment or otherwise, so that they are not out doing something. And this has obviously been a problem I've seen in my particular practice is you have somebody with mental health issues and maybe they're not competent and they're probably going to get their charges dismissed. And that's if they're not being able to be restored to competency, which often happens if there's not medication that can treat the individual. But the reality of it is they're probably not going to get the help they need unless and until they go do something else that, usually harms somebody else or themselves and puts them back into the legal system. So what do? Warehouse them in prison? Well, if they're not competent, you can't proceed. So they sit in a jail lingering. I don't know what the answer is, ladies and gentlemen, but we've got to do something, because how many cases have we seen lately where there's always these underlying mental health issues? Got to do something. And we got to do something before it continues. It's only getting worse. Next on the docket, Barry Morphew. He is still in custody. I checked as of today because, he had his bond reduction hearing last week, and I thought for sure he was going to be out. So Barry Morphew, the man accused of murdering his wife, Suzanne Morphew, continues to be held in the Alamosa County Detention Center. This follows a court hearing last week in which his bond was modified to allow posting through cash, property, or surety, though the amount remains set at $3 million. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about this last week on our live program on Tuesday night. The bond is set at $3 million. Cash. So he'd have to come up with $3 million in cash. Well, guess what? That's tough to do. So the defense said, reduce the bond to $500,000 because you know what? He's got close community ties, diminished financial resources than maybe what he had before when he was able to post a bond. And he was, showed up for court at $500,000 just like the last time. Well, the judge says, no, I'm not going to reduce it, but I'm going to modify it. So you can use cash, obviously, $3 million if you got it. Write a check at the clerk's office. Property, $3 million in property, or you can go to a surety, a bail bonds person. And that's anywhere usually between 5 to 10%. So if $3 million is $300,000. So you got to pay the bonds person $300,000. That's their cost of doing business. But this is where the catch comes in, ladies and gentlemen. The bonds person, which is really an insurance company, says, yeah, we'll post that bond. We'll take our premium of, 10%, $300,000, but we need $3 million in collateral. So if you don't show up for court, we seize that property because we need that to pay the court because we're promising to pay $3 million if you don't show up for court. Now, something of this large of a bond, it's probably not going to happen overnight. But I expected it, maybe a little bit of maybe. We'll have to wait and see if it actually happens. Now, at that hearing, the prosecutors opposed the motion, describing Morphew obviously as a flight risk due to his relocation and the use of an alias. Yeah, old Lee now. Not Barry Morphew, Lee. Anyway, the judge denied the reduction and, like I said, hey, you can use cash, property, or surety, enabling him to potentially use funds and real estate equity for his release. Now, Morphew, who appeared in civilian attire, has not yet, like I said, posted the bond. He remains in custody. His daughters attended the hearing in support of him, which is interesting dynamics. We'll see. The father is accused of killing the mother, but the daughters are supporting their dad. I always wondered after the first case got dismissed for complete prosecutorial incompetence if the daughters would remain and support their father. It appears as though they are. So for those who are familiar with the case, this case stems from Suzanne Morphew's 2020 disappearance with charges refiled after her remains were found in 2023. A status conference is set later this month, and the police have not commented on any further investigation that's going on. So keeping with the bail bond theme today, let's kind of go with a courtroom in California where, yes, the notorious or infamous Alan Jackson. That's right. Alan Jackson has suffering a little bit of bail blues. Alan Jackson, the attorney, Karen Reed fame, can do no wrong. But in a courtroom showdown that hit all the wrong notes, the esteemed defense attorney Alan Jackson, hailed by some as the great for his legal lyric prowess, faced a resounding judicial smackdown. The Los Angeles County Judge Thomas Rubinson swiftly denied Jackson's plea to slash his client's bond, and that's Frazier Michael Bond's bail, from $4 million down to $2 million, leaving the defense team, a little money there so they could, do the case. But no, it left the defense team's wallet singing the blues. Now, Mr. Baum has been charged with 4 counts of murder after a tragic car accident that claimed the lives of 4 Pepperdine University sorority sisters. And it appeared alongside Jackson in this ill-fated hearing on September 5th. Now, Jackson strummed a familiar tune, insisting the reduction was essential to unlocked frozen funds from Mr. Baum's family's home sale. Cash desperately needed for an expert-intensive defense featuring accident reconstructionists, human factors wizards, psychological sleuths, and more. He said, quote, "We need to get the true story out," Jackson crooned to the court, backed by the 150 glowing character letters and tale of the family's depleted retirement accounts, sold home, and borrowed money. But the Judge Robinson, wasn't buying tickets to this sympathy concert. "You're basically asking me to reduce his bond so that he can retain private counsel and experts of his choice," the judge retorted dryly. "This is not a legitimate reason to reduce bail," the judge noted, echoing the prosecutor's harmony. The judge noted the legal basis existing for the request, especially since Baum's bail had already been cut in half from $8 million to the $4 million. And the prosecutors delivered the mic drop line, "He can't be indigent and afford bail at the same time." Ouch. Talk about a harsh refrain. Well, the judge suggested Baum could ditch the high-priced solo act and opt for a public defender ensemble if funds were truly that tight. With Baum still out on his current $4 million bond and no driving privileges for 2 years, deemed no flight risk or road menacing, the judge held firm. Now, the burning question, will the great Alan Jackson bow out gracefully given the bond reduction was denied? And, if he doesn't have the experts, can he do the case? We'll have to wait and see. Or will he improvise a new verse in his ongoing legal ballad? Baum's next court date is set for October 8th. Little pro practice tip here. Obviously, when your child gets arrested, you want to get him out of custody. You'll do anything for your kid. And I've had to have some hard conversations over the years with parents that had the means to do whatever they needed to do for their child. And I basically said, if you'd really like to help your child, don't bond them out. Let them sit there. Let them ponder things. Okay. Now, Mr. Baum's case, obviously he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. Was it just a horrible accident? Well, I don't know. He's allegedly driving over 100 some odd miles an hour, goes around the corner, hits these, young ladies going to Pepperdine. Now, Pepperdine's not exactly a cheap school. In fact, it's quite expensive. My daughter looked at going there at one point. But my guess is that these young victims, these 4 sorority sisters that went to Pepperdine, their families have means, and they're going to keep their pressure on the prosecutor. Okay. But somebody should have told Mr. Baum and had the realist conversation with his family. Listen, you can go tie up $4 million to bond him out, but you're still going to have to prepare a defense. You're probably looking at $1 million, or you can keep him in custody, save the money on that bond for the attorneys, if that's truly what you want to do, or keep him in custody, let him go with the public defender. And if there's a conflict, they'll appoint private counsel. But the reality of it is it's a dead body case. Rule of thumb, if there's a dead body, somebody's got to go to prison. That's the way prosecutors think. And you got 4 dead bodies. They can go through all the motions they want, but at the end of the day, Mr. Baum's car hit these ladies' car, killing them for the most part instantly, as I understand it. Somebody's going to prison. It's not a question of if, but for how long. So you think maybe, like I said, somebody have a sit-down talk with them and say, let's cut a deal. But that's not what some people are going to do. They're going to milk it. Now, of course, Alan Jackson, he's entitled to do cases for free. I hear he made a few bucks on a case back on the East Coast. Maybe he'd like to do this case pro bono, perhaps. Mr. Jackson? I wouldn't, but hey. And one more factor that came into it is the bonds company, the insurance company, they don't want to release the property. That's their collateral, right? So why would they do that? What do we say about the 12 undeniable truths of life from a criminal defense attorney? It's always about the money. And when they say it's not, guess what? It is. Next, a Fort Worth man charged with murder. let's see how it got there. So police in Fort Worth have apprehended and formally accused a local individual of homicide following his admission to the fatal strangulation of a woman residing with him back in March, along with, throwing her remains and associated items from a bridge in the vicinity of Bowie, Texas. Now, the suspect, identified as Dennis William Day, faces murder charges linked to the vanishing of Rana Nofel Saluri. Police reports suggest that Day confessed to manually strangling Saluri and discarding her body as well as other evidence from a bridge. Efforts to locate her remains have been unsuccessful to date, and the search continues. Now, law enforcement there in Fort Worth commenced a probe into a reported missing individual based upon an arrest document. So, Rana Nofel Saluri, she was 47, was declared missing by a colleague back in June of 2025. The colleague indicated that their final interaction occurred back on March 19th and appeared to conclude unexpectedly during the exchange. And subsequent attempts to contact the victim proved futile. The colleague informed police that Saluri had requested time off for a minor medical procedure and was anticipated to resume her duties as a flight attendant with Envoy Air Inc. on March 31st, but failed to show up. The colleague further disclosed that Saluri had cohabited with 66-year-old Dennis William Day for approximately 1 year, and he was the last known individual to have seen her roughly 3 months prior. A video provided by the colleague dated March 19th captured audio of a male voice shouting in the background with Saluri's firearm visible on a bed, as detailed in the final arrest affidavit. Further scrutiny revealed that Saluri had not engaged in any air travel for professional or personal purposes since her final work-related flight from Phoenix to the Dallas-Fort Worth airport there at DFW back in October of 2024. Now, Envoy Air confirmed to investigators that they had been unable to reach Saluri and had received no communications from her. Her manager noted that this behavior was inconsistent with her 5-year tenure at the company, and needless to say, growing suspicions towards the cohabitant back in May, officers responded to Day's residence on Grantland Circle to remove Saluri's vehicle, which had remained stationary, stuck in the same spot there for nearly 2 months. Day informed police that he had not encountered Saluri during that period. He also mentioned relocating her possessions to a storage facility without displaying any awareness or worry regarding her absence. Now, records did indicate that the victim had acquired the vehicle shortly before her disappearance. And on a June 10th welfare check that was conducted at the Day's home, he described Saluri as a long-term acquaintance who had resided there before she vanished. Mr. Day claimed no contact with her over the preceding 3 months, despite attempts to call and message her himself. He stated that she had recently purchased the car, left it outside the residence, and he had no knowledge as to her location. The arrest affidavit specifies that Saluri's last confirmed sign of life was on March 21st. Relatives and acquaintances provided no insights into her whereabouts, and given the vehicle's recent purchase, police deemed it improbable that she would abandon it, departing willingly. So based upon that accumulation of evidence, police concluded Saluri was deceased and transferred the matter to the homicide division. And then on June 18th, a warrant was secured for Saluri's mobile phone, right? Which is what they always do. The final outgoing call from her phone was at 3:43 p.m. on March 21st. The device's last data activity occurred just before midnight near her home, followed 9 minutes later by a signal from a tower approximately 5 miles east. And then on June 23rd, detectives interviewed Day, who initially rejected any role or knowledge of her disappearance. But with his consent, a search of the premises was executed, during which, guess what, security footage was examined. A segment of footage from March 21st around 10 p.m. depicted Day transporting what seems to be an unresponsive body from the interior of the home to the exterior yard per the arrest affidavit. Recording ceased for an extended period of time following that footage. Coincidental. Anyway, upon interrogation and confirmation with the findings, Day admitted that Saluri had been recording him and threatened to alert police, prompting him to lose control and strangled her on the kitchen floor until she succumbed. He described moving her body to the yard, and upon realizing the surveillance system was active, he disabled it. Anyway, Day further recounted placing her remains headfirst into a sizable black trash bag container and transporting them to the area near Bowie, Texas, Bowie. I'm sure it's pronounced something completely different as the way I'm pronouncing it, but I'm sure somebody will let me know, where he ejected the trash bag and the body from the bridge. En route, he discarded her mobile phone device into a river near Riverside and Interstate 35, aligning with the phone's final signal location. Several days post-murder, Day disposed of numerous items belonging to Miss Soluri, including her gun, which he claimed to have thrown into a storm water ditch beneath Interstate 35. So Day guided investigators to various bridges near where he disposed of the body, but her body remains unrecovered. As a result, Day was detained and incarcerated at the Fort Worth jail, being transferred to the Tarrant County Jail. He is charged with murder. Bond is set at $200,000. No PR bond? Really? He did help him out and all, right? Anyway, the precise nature of the relationship between Day and Soluri has not been established, but the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office has not released Day's booking photograph or his inmate directly. Now, here's the scary part about this particular case. The coworker had to say, hey, haven't heard from her. That's weird. Let me go do a police report. Let me do the police do a welfare check. Pro tip, ladies and gentlemen, keep in touch with people. Keep in touch with your family, okay? So when you don't call, it doesn't go months before they say, oh, I haven't heard anything from. And they only become a little bit concerned when the police show up. Anyway, you never know. Just keep in touch, people. Keep in touch. Keep in touch. You don't have to become friends with everybody, but check in with somebody on a regular basis that if you don't show up, maybe they run over and check the house. Just another thing to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Next, a little matrimonial mishap. 3 times at once. It happens. So in a little matrimonial mishap worthy of a sitcom script, a fellow finds himself in hot water for allegedly tying the knot with no fewer than 3 women concurrently, all in pursuit of some pecuniary perks. That's money. Anyway, the Davidson County Sheriff's Office kicked off their probe back in April, sparked by a tip on a potential polygamy case. It seems Harry Burdick Jr. amassed a trio of marriage certificates, each with a different damsel. These nuptials unfolded across North Carolina's scenic counties, Lincoln, Davison, and Guilford. Now, sleuths uncovered no traces of untied knots, meaning no divorces, prior to Burdick's subsequent vows to others. Per the police, his scheme was driven by a blend of fiscal finesse and self-serving savvy. Burdick was arrested on August 22nd, slapped with dual felony bigamy charges, and he's set to face the music in court on September 22nd. The sheriff's crew suspects the marital merry-go-round might have ensnared even more unwilling participants. So, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this guy. If you happen to be married to him, guess what? You may be married to him and, his other wives as well. Take a look. Next on the docket, this day in legal history, Monday, September 8th, 1787. During the Constitutional Convention, delegates debated and tried to refine provisions on presidential impeachment, shaping obviously some key aspects of U.S. constitutional law. What do I say, ladies and gentlemen? It's the same arguments over and over again. September 8th, 1875. Mississippi's governor requests federal troops to protect African-American voters amid Reconstruction-era violence, highlighting federal enforcement of civil rights laws. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, even back as late as 1875, when the local police wouldn't do their jobs or couldn't do their jobs, you call on the feds to come in and help clean the place up. Make sure the riffraff doesn't do anything to harm the good people that want to vote. Next on this day, September 8th, 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signs the Emergency Revenue Act, doubling income tax rates and introducing the dreaded inheritance taxes. A key development, obviously, in U.S. fiscal legislation, obviously, because before, the constitutional amendment to say that you can have federal taxation, federal government brought in all their money in through tariffs, ladies and gentlemen. And then, they've been spending money out of there since like a bunch of drunken sailors. And on this date, September 8th, 1974, President Gerald Ford grants a full pardon to former President Richard Nixon for his Watergate-related crimes. Obviously, there's always been a debate on executive clemency powers. But I do think Ford knew he was granting that pardon to him. It's not like they were going to use an auto pen or something like that, right? Next, our legal quote of the day, going total philosophical, all right? Here we go. The first branch of which rule containeth the first and the fundamental law of nature, which is to seek peace and follow it. The second, the sum of the right of nature, which is, by all means, we can to defend ourselves. Now, where would this come from, and why would I be speaking in Old English? Well, it comes from the Leviathan. Hobbes, political philosopher, where he describes the state of nature as a condition of perpetual war, where individuals compete for resources without a governing authority, leading to a life that is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. To escape this, reason provides precepts called laws of nature. And that passage derives from a foundational rule of reason. Individuals should pursue peace when attainable, but you retain the right to self-defense if peace fails. The first law of nature is obviously to seek peace, obliges individuals to prioritize peaceful coexistence, as mutual aggressions undermines your self-preservation. And then the right of nature, summarized in the second branch as all means by which we can defend ourselves, grants liberty to use any necessary action for survival when peace is impossible. Now, this right is not a law, but a fundamental liberty in the absence of societal constraints. Now, like I said, this comes from Thomas Hobbes, who lived from 1588 to 1679, was an English philosopher renowned for his contributions to political philosophy, ethics, and materialism. He was born in England during a time of great political unrest, and his travel in Europe exposed him to thinkers like Galileo and Descartes, influencing his view on the universe and human behavior. And then we have his book, his most influential book. Had to read this stuff in college because, when you're a political science major, you got to read all the great political theorists. Anyway, he provided that humans are driven by self-interest and fear, necessitating a strong central authority, i.e., government. Now, some of his ideas shaped modern political thought, influencing people like John Locke and Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau as well. And guess what? Hobbes lived to a ripe age of 91. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, remember, everything we talk about today has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. All right. How do you get along with everybody? But you got to be able to defend yourself. Same stuff. Going back to the 1600s. I'm sure it was going on long before that. It always has been. It's nothing new. We just repackage it every few decades and try to act like it's new. We've never seen this problem before. Something to think about. And finally today, our dumb criminal of the day. So take a look at this little hijinks on the highways of Colorado. Look at this guy. In a display of aerial surveillance that equals part impressive and ironic, the Colorado State Patrol unveiled footage on Friday capturing a motorcyclist zipping along a blistering 142 miles per hour through a sedate 65 mile an hour construction zone on northbound I-25. Stretching from Larkspur to Castle Rock like a daredevil auditioning for a role in a high-octane thriller, but without the stunt double. Now, the speed demon in question, 27-year-old Matthew Galick, found his joyride curtailed when troopers pulled him over during a routine traffic stop on Thursday afternoon in Lone Tree. Galick was promptly escorted to the Douglas County Jail, facing a trifecta of charges: clocking 142 miles in a 65 mile an hour area, engaging in reckless driving that could rival a slalom skier, and neglecting to produce proof of insurance because apparently safety nets are optional when you live on the edge. Now, the incriminating video shot from a State Patrol aircraft depicts Gaelic artfully dodging through congested traffic and brazenly ignoring those unyielding solid white lines, as detailed in the police officer statement. Needless to say, State Patrol personnel were quick to underscore the sheer folly of such velocity on two wheels, noting it's a prime culprit in deadly accidents. This brand of heedless highway ballet endangers not just the performer, but every unsuspecting audience member on the road, said Matthew Packard, chief of the Colorado State Patrol. He's actually a really nice guy. I really like him. Anyway, with scant armor against the mishaps, motorcyclists flirting with excessive speed invite catastrophe, proving that even at everyday pace, one errant twirl can spell doom for all involved. Hey, I get it. Who doesn't like to go fast? I like things that go fast. I get it. But not smart going 142 miles an hour on the highway. All you need is one bad driver. Going to ruin it for everybody. More than likely the motorcyclist indeed. So there you go, Mr. Gaelic. You are our dumb criminal of the day. Congratulations. You made it. Need any help? Call me. We can try to beat it. I think I had once an 87-point ticket. I got pled down to a 4-pointer. Maybe there's still hope. But you may be losing your license on this one. And maybe a few days in jail. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk. And remember, that's right, the Constitution matters.